Hey guys, Steve Wise here, president and founder of Mental Fitness LLC. For today's video, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to the idea of what is mental fitness, and also then briefly review the 7 deadly phrases and the 7 steps to master your emotions. Here goes. So, what is mental fitness? In our society, we think a lot about physical fitness. We count our calories, we measure our sleep, we spend a lot on smartwatches and meal plans and gym memberships. What we don't do, however, is think about our 60,000 thoughts per day and how they're working for us. So 60,000 thoughts per day, to put that in perspective, that's about 1 thought per second for everybody's waking days, or 21.9 million thoughts per year. The challenge is that for the average person, it's a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 negative to positive thought ratio. We have a lot more negative thinking than we do positive. And of those 60,000 thoughts we have per day, 95% of them are habitual. And that means they're the same as the days before. So why is this problematic? The reason this is problematic is because our programming, if you will, is somewhat outdated. It's based on when we were evolving and we needed to look out for threats in our environment, to be on hypervigilant alert for saber-toothed tigers and other threats. And that helped us survive and get to where we're at. The challenge is, in today's society, we don't have saber-toothed tigers anymore. We don't have real life-threatening situations that we need to constantly be on the lookout for. However, our brains are still wired to think that way. The trouble with this is, if that we're not consciously aware of this and then taking control of our own thinking, it's easy to be susceptible then to depression, anxiety, or other kind of mental health issues, which is probably why at our current moment, 1 out of 4 people are suffering with a mental health disorder. That number is frustrating to me, and that's what inspired me to want to start Mental Fitness. I see a lot of us working on our physical fitness, our golf swings, our meal plans. What I don't see a lot of us thinking about is how is our thinking working for us? So, another analogy here is this. If I made $60,000 a day, or $21.9 million per year, one of the absolute first things I would do is I would talk with a financial consultant. And I would say to somebody with an expert in finances, hey, how can I best manage this amount of money? And that's what I want to do here at Mental Fitness, that we are consultants of one's thinking, that we can help you master your thinking, because I truly believe master your thinking, master your life. Everything starts with mastering your thinking. When we think about why some workout plans don't work, or why people don't get sleep, or why people don't, eat well, a lot of it is because they haven't mastered their mental fitness first. For me, mental fitness has to come first, and it has to be primary, then everything else comes into place. So, when we think about mental fitness and we think about our 60,000 thoughts per day, I also think of it in the analogy of practicing a golf swing. Now, say I am 30-some years old, and I've been practicing hitting golf balls for 30-some years, and I take 60,000 swings a day. I probably have some good habits, but I probably have some really bad habits too. Like maybe I can hit the ball, 250 yards, but I'm playing a gigantic slice in order to hit the ball straight. And then maybe one day I come across a golf instructor who says, hey Steve, if you came more from the inside out rather than going over the top, you may be able to actually hit the ball 275 yards if you practice it this way. And then say I try that. And I'm like, dang, that was good advice. I'm glad I listened to that instructor. It still would take me a while to rewire my old habits, but by meeting with that consultant, meeting with that instructor, I'd be able to hit the ball longer and farther. That is the goal that we as mental fitness therapists and counselors and trainers and coaches all want to help people achieve. We want to be able to have you hit the ball of life further and longer and more effectively to truly achieve your full potential, right? So where do we begin with all of this? We begin with 2 trainings. we begin with first, we begin with the 7 deadly phrases as kind of a mental detox. And second, we're going to talk about 7 steps to master one's emotions. And what we're going to do with these 2 trainings is that these are the foundation of mental fitness. Every other training that I'm going to do is going to build on these concepts. But just like any other sport or any other thing in life, we have to master the fundamentals first. These are the fundamentals, okay? And so when we look at those 60,000 thoughts a day, allowing a thought into our brain is a lot like what we allow a food into our body. So if you put junk food in your body, you're gonna feel tired and sluggish. If you're eating nothing but greasy cheeseburgers, you're gonna feel tired and sluggish, right? If you eat cleaner, healthier food, you're gonna feel energetic, you're gonna feel happy, you're gonna feel more positive. We need to think of what we allow into our minds very similar to what we allow into our diet, and we want to only consume healthy thoughts. So the question then becomes, well, how do we get there? And the answer to that is we first need to realize what is a healthy thought, what's an unhealthy thought. Now, I've studied negative thinking for over a decade. And the challenge is when you look up on Google or something like that, what is negative thinking? And you hear people give you this kind of cliche advice all the time, like think more positively, don't think so negatively. The challenge is, what is negative thinking? We don't do a very good job of actually quantifying it. And for those who make efforts to quantify it, we might talk about overgeneralization or catastrophizing or other, psychological defense mechanisms or things like that. But all of that is rather complicated. And negative thinking as a term in and of itself is kind of vague and undefined. So one of the first things as a trainer or as a counselor or coach that I like to do is I like to help people more clearly define what is negative thinking. When you know what is unhealthy, when you know a mocha frappe latte is 550 calories, you probably don't want to drink that mocha frappe from McDonald's when you know that's a quarter of your daily caloric intake. But if you don't know that, you might drink it and not think anything of it. So my goal with kind of training number 1 here is to help people raise awareness to their own thinking. So then they can more mindfully decide, what do I want to let into my heart and my being? What do I want to practice? What do I want to keep out? So before I dive into it, just 2 more quick analogies. One is the gatekeeper analogy. There's, I believe, a Buddhist saying that says, you are your thoughts. I get the spirit of that. I would tweak it just slightly to say that you are the gatekeeper of your thoughts. So think about it this way. If we have 60,000 thoughts a day, and I think of a negative thought kind of like a nagging neighbor, if you will. If a nagging neighbor comes knocking at my door and I perpetually let that neighbor in, what is that neighbor going to continue to do? Keep knocking at the door, right? But what if instead I recognize this neighbor is a negative influence on my life. This nagging neighbor, I'm gonna leave at the door, right? The first day that neighbor is gonna come, knock at my door, I'm not gonna let them in. They're gonna keep walking down the road. Next day they're gonna come and knock. They're gonna keep knocking. But over time, if I don't let them in, I'm a good gatekeeper of my thoughts, that nagging neighbor is gonna pass by like a cloud in the sky. And that's kind of the goal here, is to recognize, what is this negative thinking? And the process in this is, once you recognize the negative thinking, it doesn't mean that you're automatically a master of it, but it does let you do a better job of being a gatekeeper. And then over time, those negative thoughts will not knock at your door so often, and will only be letting in the more positive ones. The mantra here that I like to keep in mind is to feed the beast and starve the doubt. We want to feed the beast of positivity. We want to starve out the doubt and negativity, right? Just like a garden, our minds, if you don't tend to your garden, become overcome with weeds. If we don't tend to our minds, they become overcome with negative, toxic thinking. Our first step in improving kind of the garden of our mind is doing some weeding. That being said, let's get right into it. So, the 7 deadly phrases are I can't, I need, makes me, should, shouldn't, always, never, have to, and to me. Now, for the purposes of this training, I am going to go over these briefly. The book Mental Fitness goes over these much more comprehensively, but just to give you a brief idea of what each one is and how to kind of combat it, I'm going to go kind of over the 10-minute version of this today. So the first one is I can't. In the words of Henry Ford, whether you say you can or you can't, you're right. However, when people say I can't, that's not even the most damaging thing. Yes, it does increase their odds that that will not come true if they already are self-prophesizing that they can't. But even worse than that, it's that people probably won't even try, right? So to double down on the golf analogy, if I think, don't hit the water, don't hit the water, don't hit the water, don't hit the water, my mind is going to be attracted to putting the ball in the water. If I switch that thinking just slightly and I think put the ball on the green, it doesn't guarantee I put the ball on the green. I still have to practice golf. But it certainly more opens up the possibility and the probability that that will be achieved. So, I can't needs to be corrected and is best corrected with why can't I? Why can't I? Instead of focusing on that which I can't do, I could probably not at the moment run an ultra marathon. I haven't been training for it. However, I can run around the neighborhood and I can build upon that, right? I can't necessarily, do a bike across the United States right now. That would be something that I cannot do at this moment. But I can go for maybe a 20-mile bike ride today and build up my tolerance, and I can get my bike fitted, and I can reach out to friends to eventually achieve really, really big goals. Focusing on I can't, focusing on the void, basically just plays into the thinking where attention goes, energy flows. And I don't want any energy flowing onto the void or that which you cannot do. I want it focused on that which you can do. And that's deadly phrase number 1, I can't. Deadly phrase number 2, I need. I need is the thinking, I need someone's approval to feel worthy. I need a certain bank account number to be happy. I need a certain body image. I need a certain size house. We think we have all of these external needs that we must have in our life for internal happiness. The challenge with this thinking is that we end up waiting our whole lives for happiness. We end up thinking, I need to be at a certain point in my career, and once I graduate college, or once I get past my entry-level job, or once I buy a home, or once I get married, or once I have kids, or once I get a job promotion, or once I retire, then I'll be happy. We keep thinking we need external things for our happiness. The trouble with this thinking is that then we end up waiting all our lives for happiness. We also then have our happiness, something that I argue ought to be internal and unconditional, based in something external and very conditional. Someone else's approval of us. I need my parents to feel proud of me. I need my boss to see my value, right? And when we think these need things, we become needy and clingy, and we give up all of our emotional and power control to that outside person or thing. The way to reframe I need is to recognize that all you need is already within you. All you need comes from within. My worthiness comes from within. My emotions are in my control. My happiness is not dependent on it being 70 and sunny on a weekend. If it was, I would not be happy very often. All I need comes from within me. My worthiness, my happiness, my peace, and I want to help others find that as well. Deadly phrase number 3, makes me. Makes me is making excuses. The opposite of that is to take ownership. So, when we look at makes me, I hear this quite often, unfortunately, in counseling. People say, my boss frustrates me. My wife causes me stress, right? My kids drive me up a wall. All of these things where we, again, give up our emotional power and control to something outside of ourselves. Makes me, however, is making excuses. It's putting something else up on a pedestal and giving it all of our emotional power and control. The better way to think about makes me is instead to take extreme ownership. And that is to say, I own this emotion. I own that this emotion is a teaching tool, and that's what we're going to get to here in a minute. I'm going to regard this as the world teaching me, and that this emotion is something that I can control. So just like a business owner doesn't want to blame circumstances for his or her own business success, it's better they say, you know what? If this ship is sinking because of me, that means that I can turn it around too. I want to take extreme ownership of my circumstances and my happiness, and I want to stop saying makes me, and I want to stop making excuses, and I want to take ownership, and that puts it back within our own locus of control, and that feels better and gets more empowering, positive results. Phrase 4, should, shouldn't. There's a line from Carl Jung, a psychiatrist, I believe a Swiss psychiatrist, who said, what you resist persists. Should statements are forms of resistance. They stop us from accepting the reality for what it is, and therefore block us from getting to the transformation process that could come. So for example, if I think, my dog should listen to me better, and I then think, man, why is my dog not listening to me? He or she should get this by now. What's the problem with that thinking? It's a form of resistance, and it's going to persist in me feeling that way if I keep using that should statement. Same thing goes for emotions, right? If I think I shouldn't feel this way, why am I feeling this way? I hate feeling this way. And we resist the emotion's gonna persist. So instead of thinking that my dog should listen to me better, I want to instead kind of double down on the makes me thinking, and I want to take ownership of that. I want to practice acceptance. And a better thinking is something like, my dog is, I am struggling to reach my dog and help him or her be more obedient. And rather than think the dog should listen to me better, or this client should respond to me better, I have to think, what can I do to better reach my dog? What can I do to better reach my client? What can I do to accept the situation for what it is, and then focus on what I can control? Get back to my I can, right? How can I better reach my dog? And maybe that's, me taking my dog to a dog training class, watching a YouTube video, talking with people who have been dog owners longer than I have. But transformation starts with the acceptance. So should, shouldn't, the line here is what you resist persists. What you accept allows you to transform. The opposite of should, shouldn't is practicing acceptance. And that's deadly phrase number 4. Deadly phrase number 5, always, never. The cliche line here is, I'll always, after a breakup, you think, I'll always be single, I'll never find love again. And you hear that a lot after a breakup. The challenge with that type of thinking is that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We think, I'll always be single, I'll never find love again. It's overgeneralizing, it's catastrophizing, and it only serves to keep us stuck. So how do we break the deadly always, never thinking? The key is to always believe in yourself and never give up. The belief in yourself is the biggest predictor of your success in anything in life. How much you believe in yourself. So if you go through a breakup and you think, I'll always be single, I'll never find love again, you're probably gonna stay stuck. If instead you say, I went through a breakup and that was really, really painful, but I'm gonna look at my emotions as teaching tools, and I believe in myself. I will find love again. I will get back on that horse. You most likely will. The key to overcoming always and never is to always believe in yourself, never give up. The belief in yourself is the biggest predictor of your success in anything. Deadly phrase number 6, have to. This one's really simple. We want to scratch out our have tos and get to our get tos. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. However, even just this one tidbit can be life-changing. I discovered this phrase about 6 years ago, this tweaking of the mind. And now every time I think a have to thought, and my wife helps me with this too, I get to my get to. If I think I have to pay bills, or I have to let my dogs out, or I have to get up in the middle of the night to tend to my son, or I have to pay taxes, I get to my get to. I get to pay my bills because I get to be fortunate enough to be a homeowner and a business owner. I get to get up in the middle of the night to tend to my son if he in this case is having a rough night because I'm fortunate enough to be a father. I get to let my dogs out early in the morning because I get to have their companionship throughout life and their love. I get to do progress notes because as much as they are annoying, I can't hide that fact, I get to do a job I really, really love. When you can tweak your have-tos to your get-tos, it fills your heart with gratitude instead of resentment, right? And that little shift can make such a butterfly effect difference over the course of time. Think about it, 60,000 thoughts a day, 21.9 million thoughts per year, right? That's a lot of thinking that I still have left to do in hopefully my 60-some years of life. If every time I have a have-to thought, I tweak it to my get-to thought, how much am I gonna have in terms of returned happiness, in terms of reduced stress, with even just that little tweak? Scratch out your have-tos, get to your get-tos. Last one here on the 7 deadly phrases is to me. Often we think the world happens to me, and we present ourselves as a victim. The challenge with this happens to me thinking is that it is very, very disempowering. We are a victim of circumstance. The wind blows and we are swept up in it. Praise and blame come and go like the wind. Our goal is to be the tree amongst it all. Our goal is to look at the world as happening for us and to remove the lens of physical fairness and not think this is fair or unfair, justified or unjust, but to ask ourselves, how is this event happening for me to build my spirit and character? What is it teaching me? The character, we gain our most character when we go through the most adversity. But if we label ourselves as a victim to life circumstances, we do not then get the character insight and the growth by, growing through what we go through. If we can scratch out that victim mentality of this happens to me, poor me, I'm a victim, instead reframe it to look at the world as this is happening for me to build my spirit and character, and I can embrace the adversity and I can look at it as a positive challenge, that is a much better mentality. So that's kind of why I do what I do, right? I lost a cousin to an overdose when I was about 13 years old, and at the time I thought this was unfair and happening to me. And there's nothing fair about losing a loved one to anything. But I have internalized that as happening for me. And I look at it how it's built my spirit, my character, my why, and my passion for helping people achieve their full potential and doing what I do today. And I want people to do the same. I want them to create their own meaning out of life when they get to that stage of acceptance and create their own meaning and purpose by looking at the world happening for them, not to them. So in review, when we go through our first mental detox, one of our first goals as a company, as a counselor, or even as a person is to detoxify our thinking. The way to change behaviors is to first raise our awareness. My hope is that through this video and future trainings, that I have helped raise your awareness to these 7 deadly phrases. I can't, which can be combated with why can't I? I can, and focus on the positive. I need, which is clingy and dependent. All you need comes from within. Makes me, which is making excuses. Find and take ownership. Should, shouldn't, which is a form of resistance, practicing acceptance. Always, never, overgeneralizing, catastrophizing, instead believing in yourself. Scratching out your have to and getting to your get to, filling your heart with gratitude, and looking at to me and getting to it happening for me. If you can do those 7 tweaks, you are onto something in terms of developing a more mentally fit mindset. And that is the 7 deadly phrases. We're gonna do a quick pivot right now into training number 2. Training number 2 is the 7 steps to master your emotions. I love this training because, unfortunately, I think we are very, very bad at dealing with our emotions in this society. Benzodiazepines, which are medications used to help combat panic attacks and other purposes, went up something like 30% in 10 years between 2005 and 2015, and the average dose doubled. We're taught in our society that emotions that are undesired are bad, and we ought to resist them, avoid them, or look to numb them out, or that our brain is broken, or that we shouldn't be feeling those things. I couldn't disagree more. I believe that emotions are your working GPS system, and that emotions let you know if an action is out of line with a value, right? If I value my health, but I'm smoking cigarettes, I'm going to feel guilty about that. Good. I want to feel guilty about that. I want you to feel guilty about that. That guilt is a useful indicator of malalignment. It's letting you know that your actions are out of line with your values. But then what happens when you correct it? If you go from smoking a pack of cigarettes to a half pack, you feel better about it. Again, our emotions, just like a working GPS system that when we get lost tells us to recalculate, also let us know when we're getting back on path. We don't want to numb those things out. We want to listen to that. If I have a working GPS system, I don't want to throw it out the window. I want to listen to it and get back on course. So these are the 7 steps to master your emotions so your emotions don't master you. I want you to be able to take back the driving, the steering wheel here, and take control of your own emotions. So, Daniel Goleman coined the term emotional intelligence. Some of this builds off of his work. He thought that there were 5 components to emotional intelligence: social skills, empathy, motivation, self-awareness, and self-regulation. We're only going to look at self-awareness and self-regulation at the moment. And when studies have looked at what has been coined as emotional intelligence, or EQ, and have compared it to IQ, we see that IQ, one's general intelligence, is maybe only a 20% predictor of their life success. So 80% of it has to come from something else. Now, maybe not all of that is emotional intelligence, but when you look at people with higher levels of emotional intelligence versus people with lower levels of emotional intelligence, they are better perceived by others, have better negotiation skills, have better overall physical and psychological health, and on average, make $28,000 more per year based on having higher levels of emotional intelligence. If that in and of itself is not a reason to pay attention, I don't know what is. But here are the 7 steps to master your emotions. Again, when we look at emotional intelligence, when we talk about our emotions in society, nobody to this point has simplified it to a 7-step process to master our emotions. I'm going to attempt to do just that. So, these steps themselves are to retreat, allow, accept, reframe, explore, guidance, and action. If you want to cheat on how to remember this, think RAR-EGA, which is a totally made-up word, but sometimes to remember it, I think I'm just so mad I could go RAR-EGA, and that helps me remember the 7 steps. Goofy, but it helps. So, what are the 7 steps? Step 1 is to retreat. This is If I'm super emotionally escalated, like I'm a 7 on a scale of frustration of 1 to 10, probably not the best time for me to act. Ultimately, I'm going to do something impulsive or something not well thought through and could actually make the situation worse. So the first step in mastering your emotions is actually to take a temporary retreat and to ask oneself 2 questions in this retreat. What am I feeling? Where is it coming from? What am I feeling? Give that emotion a label. Where is it coming from? We'll get to that here. When one considers a retreat, there's basically 3 forms of retreat. There is to do something to help you de-escalate, go for a run, go for a hike, go to a place, go to counseling, go to church, whatever it is for you, go connect with nature, or to reach out to someone, contact a friend, a pastor, a confidant, a counselor. Those are kind of the 3 forms of retreat. The more retreats you have in your toolbox, the better. And those are the healthy ones. Obviously, there are unhealthy ones too. We want to help people utilize the healthy ones to not numb out the emotions, but rather to embrace them and explore them. Step 2 is allow. Allow and accept. I'm going to kind of combine here. To allow is to think that there is no right or wrong way to feel. There is no should or shouldn't to it. An emotion is simply an emotion. We allow it, we let it flow, we notice it. We don't resist it, because then it persists. And we don't let it define us. What do I mean by that? Let me give you a script that doesn't work, but that we often use. The script that doesn't work, but that we often use is, why am I feeling anxious? I hate feeling anxious. I'm always so anxious. I hate feeling anxious. My anxiety holds me back. I am anxious all the time. What's wrong with using I am language and possessive language like my when talking about an undesired emotion? Well, it acts as a self-fulfilling prophecy. My anxiety, I don't want to possess something in my language that I don't want to be. And I am not an emotion. We are not emotions. We are people, right? I have a cold. I don't become my cold. That's doesn't make sense. But we often say, I am anxious, I am depressed, right? And then where attention goes, energy flows. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how do we tweak that? We say, I am feeling blank, and give it that name. I'm feeling a little bit anxious, and that's okay. To allow it. There is no right or wrong way to feel. To allow the emotion, to notice it, but to not get swept up in it or not define yourself by it. And then to say, but I am blank. So for example, I'm feeling a little anxious, and that's okay. But I am resilient. I am flexible. I am confident. I believe in myself, right? We do not let the emotion define you, only you define you. And that's the acceptance part, that I accept the emotion for what it is, I'm going to allow it, but I am who I say I am. Only you define you. Emotions do not define us. We do not want to resist them, we want to allow them, and we want to take ownership of our own I am statements and not possess a feeling that we don't want to be. The next step here is to reframe. Sometimes when I'm doing trainings live, I will ask people, so who here has ever thought in a moment of frustration, thank you, world. I appreciate this feeling of frustration as I trust that it is a teaching tool, allowing me to look inward and grow. Not many people raise their hands when answering honestly that they look at their emotions as a blessing and a teaching tool, especially in the moment of the undesired ones. And yet, I would argue that's exactly what we ought to do. We ought to label our emotions as a blessing, as our GPS system, as a teaching tool, right? The challenge is, if we have 60,000 thoughts a day, 21.9 million thoughts per year, and we've practiced labeling our undesired emotions as very bad, no good, shouldn't feel these things, it's going to take some practice to label our undesired emotions, frustration, sadness, agitation, whatever it may be, as a blessing, as a teaching tool. Just take some practice. Just like any other thing, you lift 1 pound one time, you're not gonna get a lot of muscle growth. You practice a lot over a longer period of time, you're gonna get that growth. Practicing labeling your emotions as your GPS system. Explore guidance in action. The exploration is exactly answering the question that you asked yourself here in the retreat stage. Where is it coming from? Where is the emotion truly coming from? What's off between my actions and my values? And then how do I correct it? When I first came up with the idea for mental fitness, I was feeling a bit restless at the time, and I didn't know exactly where that emotion was coming from. So I reflected, I looked inward, and I thought to myself, what is my purpose? What is my mission? My mission, our mission, is to help people achieve their full potential. What was the reality at the time of this reflection? The reality at the time of this reflection was I, as an individual, was working with a small niched group of people in Western PA, saying largely the same thing over and over again in each session. What was the problem with that? It wasn't in line with my mission. My actions of reaching a small niche group of people were not in line with my values of helping as many people as possible achieve their full potential. I had to figure out how to bridge that gap. And that epiphany led me to writing the book that is now Mental Fitness. And when I started writing it, I felt better. And when I took a break from writing it, I felt worse. And my emotions kept me on track. They let me know to keep my actions in line and consistent with my values. And that's where happiness comes from, that integrity between one's actions and values. That is where one's full potential is really achieved. We get there by embracing our emotions as our GPS system, letting us guide us in the process, and recognizing undesired emotions are signaling to us, signals that we are off track. More desired emotions are also signals that we are getting more on track. And then we take action. And this is small action times time equals great achievement. If one starts a dieting plan, he or she likely will not see immediate results in the first week. Probably in the first month they will. But then with consistency over several months or a period of years, that's when you see the really dramatic results. The action step here is to take small actions every day, persistent, and those emotions will not go away immediately just as you have the acknowledgement or the acceptance or the first actions towards change, but will over time as those actions amplify themselves towards greater achievement. So to recap, the 7 steps to mastering your emotions are to retreat, talk to a friend, go to a place, do an activity that helps you de-escalate. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Give it a label. Where's it coming from? Allow and accept. I am feeling a bit frustrated. I'm feeling a bit anxious, and that's okay. I'm going to allow it. I accept this feeling. I am resilient. I am courageous. I am confident. I believe in myself. Feelings do not define us, only we define us. To reframe our emotions as a blessing, as our working, useful GPS system, and to practice that. Just like retraining that golf swing that we've had some bad habits with, we got to retrain our minds as well. Explore what's off here, what's inconsistent between my actions and values, and how do I tweak, either my belief or my behavior. One of the two has to change. I either look at this in a different way, or I change my behavior in response to it to get that alignment again. Our emotions are our working GPS system. They work. All of us are equipped with a perfectly working GPS system. We need not seek, perhaps in some cases, but in many cases, we need not to overly seek or too quickly seek medication to try to manage that when we can achieve mastery ourselves. And later action, small steps over time is what lead to great achievement. And with that, those are the first 2 trainings that Mental Fitness can offer. I hope that you've enjoyed this preview to them. If you would like further trainings, please feel free to reach out to us at mental-fitness.us or to me directly at 412-334-9790. And I really appreciate you listening. Thanks.